Namastubhyam. And I say that because this group is really, really special to me. I know that many of us, we've been a part of each other's lives for decades, and some have ventured off and gone into their own deep study. And it's wonderful when we come back together. And it's very auspicious to be opening this new pada, the Kaivalya pada. So we'll go right to our share screen. And realize that this will be in your notes, as well as a poem that kind of touches the heart and communicates the essence of the sutra, along with a study sheet and a sound bite. So all of that is there for you. Well, let us take a moment to really feel the amrita of when we gather with those who are inspiring. And it's not even so much about getting something, but about really developing our resonance field that is beyond time, that is beyond space, but is in that eternal present moment of love as a force that connects all of creation, both manifest and unmanifest. So feel free to bring your hands to your heart. Drop in as we evolve through our capacity, through release, and to feel that there is a thread of something that is too sweet for words, that is interwoven into our lives, and that has brought us together. So as we offer our prana as dana, as spiritual wealth, exhale slowly and feel your cells drop. Pause, relax. And as you open the tap, just feel the natural influx of this incandescent force of creativity. So I will say the word first before we chant it. Janma, Janma, Aushadi, Aushadi, that S is like the shirt. Aushadi, mantra, mantra, tapaha, tapaha, samadhi, jaha, samadhi, jaha, sit, ayaha. And when we have that aha, remember Rama would say, this is where we really release the neurons of our heart and we just kind of shake off the karmic dust, as Patanjali would say. Shall we? Janma, Janma, Janmaushadi, Janmaushadi, Janmaushadi mantra, Janmaushadi mantra, Janmaushadi mantra tapaha, Janmaushadi mantra tapaha, Janmaushadi mantra tapaha samadhi jaha, Janmaushadi mantra tapaha samadhi jaha, Janmaushadi mantra tapaha samadhi jaha siddhaya ha. Janmaushadi mantra tapaha samadhi jaha siddhaya ha. Janmaushadhi mantra tapa samati jahat siddhayaha. Janmaushadhi mantra tapa samati jaya siddhayaha. Janmaushadhi mantra tapa samati jaya siddhayaha. Potent skill, kind of like magical qualities, are accomplished by genetic inheritance, janma, alchemy, aushadhi, mantra, devotion to sacred incantations or truths, tapas, psychic fire, and samadhi, realizing wholeness, the bigger picture, and the presence of divinity or sacredness. Okay. So the siddhis, how these capacities are developed, how we become accomplished, which is our ability to see the bigger picture. And really, the project is to live with soul, right? In a world in which soul is, it's not so sexy because it can't be packaged or bought or commoditized, but that's that sense of the hungry ghost. So either by birth, there could be that genetic inheritance, or that we just have this, like we were made this way since birth, we were born this way, in which we have an aspiration to become more refined, to develop a deeper relationship with the subtle. By spiritual experience gained through alchemy, and this traditionally would mean also shamanic practices and medicines, shamanic initiation, incantation, our yearning, right? Like that yearning in which we're calling and we're receiving, that call is the response of divinity. That yearning, it's like seeing the sacred in life, and ascetic practices in which it's that tivra samveganam asanaha, that student that's really of a unique caliber, because they're willing to let go of what is slowing them down or encumbering them. So it's about throwing things away, simplicity, and taking on practices that are cathartic, so that we have the freedom to loosen worn out behaviors. And really, there's a deep desire to tap into what is more instinctive, what is wild, and then to reconnect with banished parts of self. So it's a discipline not of rigidity, but out of love. And then finally, by profound meditation, the presence of divinity and the sacred. And really, this is such a critical moment, like a tipping point, is when we can see what is classically described as the dvadvas, the division between the profane and the sacred. But perhaps we might think of it as what we view as being mundane, as actually being a form of ordinary divinity. So really, yoga, it's a way that we're empowered to keep our pathways open. And even, this sense of satsang, when we sit together, we pull wisdom through each other. So, as much as, we want to study on our own, the conversations keeps the, our capacity for opening new pathways, and that malleability of our perspective more flexible and dynamic, so that we can really take delight in yoga as a form of communion. So what we're going to see in this chapter, and what's really unique, in the other padas, it's been like, these are the states of mind, these are the the thresholds and the initiations that you're going to pass, and these are the qualities, and this is the way that we practice, is as we're going to see in this chapter, as we've developed through this discipline of love, a reframing of our perspective, that it's not a forceful thing. What we're actually doing is learning to manage the cross currents of the vrittis and feel part of a greater flow. So change already happens by itself, but transformation, we can really accelerate it when we bring in our imagination. And this is where the sutra are expanding our vision, divya drishti. So wholeness is already about seeing what is functional, what's already whole. And we're studying to learn about ourselves, not so much about yoga, so that it becomes svadharma, what is already within us, and we support what is whole. To feel our own wholeness, our own creativity, and this inner nexus of calm, free of fluctuating conditions or circumstances. And this is considered to be siddhi, supranormal, in contrast to society's tendency to alienate and fragment and to come from a place of feeling unworthy or not quite enough. So this chapter, which sounds a lot like the new baby that you're holding, Kaivalya. Good timing, little one, to come in with that. It's about the end of striving, that we can lean into something bigger. And it's about really deepening our connection with grace and offering our own good graces. So here are further insights, points of inspiration for the path of getting lighter, of lightening up. And the formula in the way that we can just be, tada drashtuhu svarupe vastanam, real human beings, true, honest human beings, simple birth, without drama, without leaving residue, but living a clean and open life. So this in itself is where we're feeding something bigger that we may not see bloom in this lifetime, but it's what we do for the future generations and for the little ones that we're cradling in our arms, or the little ones who have yet to be born. So this pada is where it's not about effort anymore, right? There's been tremendous efforts made, and peppered in the first pada, we were told eventually effort becomes an obstacle itself, as do achievements, right? It's not about that. So Kaivalya is not about an escape. It's and interestingly enough, when you look at most translations, this is where like the lacking of prana of someone who's really living this, and so much of this has been reduced to academia, and now it's very au courant to speak about how unimportant the Yoga Sutra are, which I find amusing, because obviously there wasn't like the practice, which really the practice and life is what authenticates these teachings, is what makes them viable. So oftentimes Kaivalya is described as isolation, as if yoga was a form of alienation or avoidance or repression, or even transcendence, but really it's about incarnation. So what we're learning to do is shift our point of view to an uncolored universal heart, and to know that this freedom in letting go, we're not going to lose anything that has enduring value. So aloneness just means that it's like all one, and that there's this shift in our egoic personality, what my husband calls the spiritualized ego. that we're moving into a larger vision, and that this clear heart space that we hold as most precious is what manifests in the world through our relationships and our behavior. And that we can become a channel of this divine love. So certainly things are going to arise, right? You know, I know, Sherry, you've had storms in your area and trees falling and things come up, but really that we can feel a connection to source, right? That instead of relying on excuses, we show up in a really profound way. And this brings the renewal and blessing to the world village, even in the most aggressive and challenging of times. So yoga is seeing spirit and nature, mind and body, consciousness and being, the mundane and the sacred, soul and spirit, and unification of the objective and subjective worlds, which we integrate through our embodiment and our expression. And really, that we are part of that self-revelatory process of disclosing the underlying greater integrity that already is. So, Kaivalya already is. It's simply about becoming more in tune and in touch with it and communing with the sacred, and realize that the possibility of feeling of being isolated or alienated is just an idea. It's just something that is conjured within ourselves and is a touch point. It's an opportunity to open up to deeper layers. So Kaivalyam is our natural state. As love is how we stay alive even after we are gone. So what is natural does not require a cause to arise. So let's start to unpack these a little bit. Janma means powers that are revealed at birth. And maybe it's through our lineage, or if you believe in reincarnation, prior births. Some people are naturally born gifted. It's not random, it's inherited. They are naturally inclined more than others to have that seeking for the larger understanding, a more holistic perspective. They're seeking peace. They're seeking true inner contentment. They're born with a natural spiritual genius. They come with a sense of incandescence and that radiance of love. So even at a young age, they have this incredible tenderness and that sense of wanting to nurture and nourish the sacred. Some are even born with psychic abilities, and they have this rare natural capacity to drop the veils between the conscious and the unconscious mind, and they're highly inclined to virtue. So ultimately, everyone is born with unique natural gifts. But in the modern world, there really isn't so much a context, and they're refused initiation. So when we look in more in the original ways, there was a mentorship and there was an initiation, right? There were rites and there were rituals in which, you know, there was a heavy or a guru who showed that individual that they had raw resources within themselves, and really, raise the bar and raise that student as that mentor had been raised. So they can be enhanced, these natural latent gifts, and activated with tapas. Also with a heavy, with a guru or a mentor, someone who really takes you on. Because even though we come with these natural gifts, sometimes we're born blocked, or there's a callousness or spiritual amnesia in the community or even in the family. So it doesn't mean that just because if someone has this gift, it doesn't mean that their morality or personality has been developed. So we do need that process. And, we even can look at how some, sages or rishis or rishikas or saints, they actually were born already filled with that love of divinity. Even in our tradition, Shankaracharya, who is one of our distant lineage holders, he renounced the world at age 8 and started writing commentaries on scripture. Babaji, Baba Haridas, from a very young age, he was always trying to wander off into the mountains to find a cave to meditate, because he told his mother he felt like the box of earth and sky was crushing him. And he had this deep innate calling to tune in to the subtle realms. So there's 4 virtuous combinations that create this Janma. There's constitutional forces, including parents of virtue, parents who feel that sense of a higher calling, that are feeding something bigger than what can be locked away or commodified. There's developmental forces, anatomical, physiological, and psychological development. And we do inherit our parents' nervous systems, which is why being born to a yogi is considered to be such an auspicious birth. There's environmental forces. And then there's pre-incarnation forces. So here's a quote from the Gita. Arjuna asks Krishna, "What if I have faith, but I do not struggle hard enough? And my mind wanders away from the practice of yoga and I fail to reach realization." And Krishna answers, "Even if you fall away from yoga practice, you still win the heaven of the doers of good deeds, and you will dwell there for many long years. Then, when you take rebirth or the next birth, you will be born into a home of pure and prosperous parents. You will regain your spiritual discernment from a previous lifetime and strive even more for realization. You will be called and vested to search for the sacred, even in spite of yourself." The next category is aushadhi, and this is still, used in modern India to indicate herbs. And more specifically, it's speaking about elixirs. So some of us are born just inclined to noticeably respond to differences in our diet, whether we're taking vitamins, sedatives, opiates. I know that I had hay fever. I was also, my mother's Scandinavian. So my sandwich going to school was 2 pieces of bread, about a 1/4 inch of butter on either side, and a slab of cheese. That's a Scandinavian's mother love. And I had endless hay fever. And I was like on this steady trickle of Sudafed. So I'm kind of wondering. And then finally I was like, oh, what if I quit dairy, and really seeing how, dietary changes affect me. And that's something that definitely we need to tune into, because the animal of our body is changing all the time. But this also includes, how we can work alchemically with our own tissues, and to realize that our states of mind and emotion have physiological manifestations. So we can work with our alchemy through asana, pranayama, and even plant medicines. So, how we also can use sacred medicines in order to break down barriers. Now, this is not presented in the context of current addiction, but therapeutic usage. And so this is very much, up these days, in which people are using what used to be considered, you know, drugs, but using mushrooms or ketamine or shamanic plants they've done studies that when there's trauma, the dendrites, which are the really fine nerve endings at the end of your neurons, that they literally become frazzled. Okay. And that there's kind of a resealing of these frayed parts of our nervous system. But we are also advised, okay, there is a time and a place, but don't rely on these things, because it's really about the integration. It's not about the peak experiences. And if you rely on them, they can lead to a sense of spiritual desiccation or even disbelief. Or, Rama used to say that it can leave holes in your psychic field. It can also lead to depression and lower serotonin levels. So traditionally, aushadi would mean the juice of certain herbs, for example, the soma. So it's really about the wise use of herbs, set and setting, with right and intelligent administering. But if we're going to, take a medicine path, we need a roadman and a woman. It's not a weekend workshop, a weekend shaman workshop in which then you're leading shamanic ceremonies, okay? And so even understanding that chemistry began as alchemy. So in the yogic tradition, there was a sect called the Rasayana, and they knew that if the body came to an end, it would slow their process of realization down. So they used what are considered to be poisons as medicine. And we know that in the yogic tradition, poison can cure and poison can kill. So it's a very subtle alchemy. And they actually used mercury and sulfur quite often. And then there were also like the lost recipe of soma, which came from the realm of the underworld known as Patala. And this was, Patala is actually the realm of the Nagas, or the snakes. And remember, the snake represents the full cycle, the moon, the shedding, the waxing and the waning phases, as well as the ability to go into the underworld and live in the world, and this capacity to molt. So Patala is also the name, I didn't know this, of the snake that Lord Shiva wears around his neck. And in this underworld, it's not dark at all. And just like there's 7 realms, they say in heavenly realms, there's 7 realms of underworld. And it's not a demonic place, whether you think of it as deep dive or ascension. It's where we're moving from intrinsic to extrinsic. And it's not dark there, because when we go into that shadow, which is where the alienated parts of self, there's gems that are discovered there. And these gems have a luminosity. So it's about our ability to go into the deeper substrata of experience and really see, what are the repeating themes, and what is that Sundara? What is that piece that we were just Janma, born this way with a natural sensitivity and sensibility, that we're holding that sacred strand and that remembrance. So we can use natural elixirs, crystals, rocks, plants, alchemy, shamanic practices to clear out and activate the inner evolutionary circuits. So we're really working with the neuroendocrine system and clear our cellular memory to access what has been seeded within us, that we've all been seeded with a mission, and having that capacity for divyadrishti, for vision. So in this way, we're healing through the natural realm, through botanical and mineral and energetic potency, even the ocean spray, right? Or sitting by waterfall. As I'm seeing, Sherry here, the monarch butterflies, or, the movement patterns of birds. So in this way, it stimulates, and it's a catalytic process that stimulates the production of inner amrita, what is life affirming nectar in your life, okay? Whether it's words or memories or the perfume of the little one who's cradled in your arms. So yoga is about stirring these juices, living Anu in our gut, in our heart, and in our minds, and about realizing this reality, like the cloudy ocean of milk. We can't really see it, but there's tremendous nourishment there, but we have to do some churning. So even if we were able to see a mirage, the mirage is present, but it's like water. We don't go there to drink. We're able to see the passing shapes of Maya, the changing nature of avidya, where we know we're only ever getting a glimpse, and we're able to access the deeper substratum. Okay, so Janma, the birth, and Aushadi cannot be sustained at will. We still have to make efforts for integration. Now we're at mantra. And some of us are naturally born with, a sensibility to be inspired by music, by chanting, recitation of scriptures, of sacred teachings, and devotion to scriptural studies. And now we're stepping into a whole other level, because this requires conscious and devoted commitment. And it has that sense of shraddha, which is like, even though these things have been well explained, they're inexplicable. So it requires a deeper kind of commitment. Okay. So recitation of incantations, ideas, and formulae, which expand our cosmology. And this is the means of deeper learning, of spiritual erudition, our capacity for reflection, and to awaken our self-revelatory abilities, as well as, and this isn't required, but I did require it of myself. I was like, if I'm going to teach this pada, I need to learn it by heart. And Krishnamacharya said that that's really an important step for us. So you're all invited to just take it on. You can't pass or fail, but it definitely works on you on a vibratory level. So it's true for learning that there needs to be repetition, right? We need to apply ourselves. We're developing new neural pathways, new connections within our neurology, which is known as lighting ourselves up, or that process of enlightenment. So specifically, that which protects or uplifts our normal, deeply embedded and embroiled pattern of thinking. Traditionally, there needs to be an activation of the mantra. Okay. And that's where, I've shared, like with Rama, I had already studied sutras and there's so many books, and yet they feel flat in their definition. And there's that deeper part of us that knows when someone has been really moved by these teachings, it's not just studied on an academic level and telling you what it isn't. It's like what has set them on fire. So when we have that activation, we might have the chicken skin. For me, I was just weeping when I heard Rama, and I thought, oh my God, this is what brought me to yoga, and it had become lost. So someone who's going to initiate you and bring about positive changes, someone who, affirms what is good for you, but also holds your feet to the fire. So Samskrita, the language of yoga, is a form of physics. We live in the midst of ordinary daily miracles that are rarely appreciated, drala, that ordinary magic. And the language of Samskrita, Nico, my son, goes through this, he's got a spelling, and English doesn't make any sense. It's not like a literal language, but Samskrita is written, it's spoken as it is written, as is Greek, as our kind of more original languages. So it perfectly replicates the vibrational code that make up the natural laws, and they help us to tune into it. It's this vibrational reattunement, and it's a formula that joins gravity with light and sound. And this is the way that we can actually transform our own molecular structure into a body of light through this angelic language, Deva Nagari. So we can only know or understand or embody the basis of creation and creativity by becoming it. This isn't book knowledge, right? And Samskrita is like the soundtrack of the way that the created world arises. It's a portal into the quantum field that cultivates our subtle body and our intention. It's a key for us in a world of broken mirrors. It gives us a key to be able to unlock, to see beyond the distortions into the deeper essence, and to vibrate our sympathetic heartstrings. So typically, we don't learn this from books, okay? This is a pre-literate tradition, right? But it's a transmission. It's a heart stream, a love stream that comes from a mentor who was also initiated in the teachings of love. And we use sound and vibration to gently clear dormant pathways. And so there are particular formulae or particular intentions. But really, the intention of all yogic ritual is to get out of inertia, get out of the excuses. So bravo to all of you who've made the effort to be here. I know life is full, but that is the inertia of life. And I remember reading, if you don't have, time for spiritual practice, you don't have a life. So it's like really making that time and space is an important thing. Then, as we'll learn in the next few sutras, then grace will fill that space. So mantra includes the whole mechanism of study, of analysis, of reflection, reasoning, memorizing, and really it's about our capacity for capacity and learning to learn. When we take it to heart, then it's always with you. And it actually becomes like a soundtrack in your life. You'll find that. And sometimes that will happen where there's a particular term that just keeps arising in your consciousness. And you're like, what is this? What is this? And you go back and revisit it. And it's the way that the deeper intelligence is like slowly like tapping on your shoulder and knocking at your heart. So when we tune into the force, because chanting or speaking is a form of listening, we actually start to imbibe those qualities. Okay. Ishta Devata are the divine qualities which we would like to reflect. And then this unfolds our latent spiritual, psychic, and occult faculties and helps us to clear away emotional pain. Then we realize that guidance is always present and it's sourced from within. So the followers of the first three, Janma, Aushadhi, and Mantra, can still fall from grace through pride, confused values and priorities, and negligence. And they can fall into spiritual amnesia, but not through tapas and samadhi with some mantra in it. So the form of mantra is really about svadhyaya. It's about getting to know ourselves better. And this is where, rather than even learning the sutra, it's about the conversations we have and the interest that it sparks. Patanjali says if you're deeply interested and curious, success is already here. You're living a life of passion and purpose, and that is the project of yoga. So I love that quote from the Talmud where, it's like before scripture is opened, there is that invocation that the study eventually trickles from our heads into our hearts and then is diffused into our life and our relationships. So, then it's not just that, but it's sitting with ourselves. How do I feel inside of myself? How do I feel in context to these other situations? And seeing our own vritti, our own spirals, our habits, our propensities, our imprints. And also being in touch with that deep longing within us where we grieve the loss of who we were before we experienced trauma. Excuse me. And no part of our life is untouched by that trauma. So being able to identify the triggers and gain self-understanding. As Marion Woodman said, we can either suffer neurotically or suffer with patience. And again, patience means to joyfully or to be in a state of wonder to see how things unfold. So in this way, it's about the effort of developing that compassion so we are less neurotic. That's the baseline of conditioned consciousness. And to see how the ordinary mind wavers and is unstable. So it's interesting. I was watching this great documentary on Carlos Santana on the way home from Durango yesterday. And he said, if you want to play in my band, you have to have stability, a good disposition, and you have to have diligence. And I was like, wow, that's a sutra, right? He said, because we just never know where this music is going to go. And he was really, a devotee and was making magic with his music. So there's much confusion when it comes to yoga and spirituality. And this wisdom, when we go back to these more like original teachings, indigenous teachings, they bring into context with divine forces. It's not about mental questioning, but true self inquiry in which we're not fixating on the I position. And this fuels the light of insight, which then sparks enlightenment and empowers us to learn from ourselves and from one another. So, active study of what inspires you and integration of that. To be in the company and the presence of others who inspire us, who are loving, who are willing to get over their shrunken sense of self, avidya, the shrunken world, and to really be moved by the heart. This helps us keep our priorities straight and what brings us deep peace, even in moments of friction. Okay, boy, there's a lot here, but I'm going to have to truncate it. So let's go on to tapas. And tapas is psychic fire, not a turning away, but an affirmation of what really matters, where we turn away from what is soul crushing, superficial, or vitality draining. Some people respond to self-discipline ranging from self-deprivation to utter dedication to altruistic effort. There's the story of Hiranyakashipu, who is recounted in the Puranas, where he stood on his toes. Remember I shared that long ago, where you do vrikshasana and you go to the ball of your foot and then you close your eyes. And first you look up into the tree and see what kind of fruit you are, and then you close your eyes. So he did this for so long that the ants actually came and started to build a hill on him. And then as he was living in this ant hill, the ants started consuming everything but his bones and his vayu, his internal airs of vitality or winds. And then he gains all of these siddhi, these supranormal powers, and he gains so many that the balance of the universe is disturbed. So Brahman, the creator, comes and says, what do you want? Why are you doing this? What are you trying to get? And Hiranyakashipu says, I want immortality. And Brahman, the creator, says, even I don't have that. So I can't give it to you. Everything is always changing. So then Hiranyakashipu, he negotiates and he says, well, then make it so that no created being, neither day nor night, neither inside or outside, on earth or in air or with any weapon, can kill me. And Lord Vishnu, who is the sustainer, the nourisher of the universe, right? Here's somebody who wants to be a god. And now, as soon as you want to be a god, you're creating hierarchy. That's missing the point, and there's alienation. So Vishnu incarnates as Narasimha. He's neither human nor animal. He's not a created being. He's half man and half lion. And he disembowels this egomaniac being, Hiranyakashipu, on the threshold. And that sense of the threshold is very powerful because life is a series of thresholds. And so tapas is where we are able to tap into something that is instinctive and wild, something that has been seated within us. Even the image of the snake, it's like, it's not quite human yet. It's not quite an animal. It's like this really primal, archetypical force. And that when we tap into something instinctive and wild, we reconnect with the parts of ourself that were alienated or banished or just didn't have a place within the consensus. So if we don't have a conscious and contained way of using this primal energy, like we're working with wildfire, it unconsciously will become mindless consumption and even addiction. If we repress this wild energy and we try to become domesticated, we become spiritually dehydrated. So tapas is like this deeper impulse that wants to feed something wild and holy. And even the rishi and the rishikas, they were always slightly disheveled. They didn't really live in culture. They were living on the fringe, right? So there was something very undomesticated. They were living according to another understanding of what really mattered. Something that can't be bought, sold, or packaged. So until we learn to really touch this deeper fire within us, we're going to turn to something external to free us, something external to inspire our passion and our inner life, and that inner fire or jati is denied and squelched. Marion Woodman wrote that if we strive to achieve what is authentic, it leads to addiction and further neuroses. So again, we need stability, we need good disposition, and we need stamina. And so Carlos Santana, he's the Rishi of the week who trickled in, he says, something has to stimulate your imagination, your determination, and your conviction. And in this way, you connect your own molecules to the light and can use your energy to create something beautiful. I love that. So this is the quickening. And the quickening, I did a little research on that. According to, the ancient Greeks, they said around 40 days, the soul starts to become realized, and even the fetus takes on human characteristics. And this is before we had pregnancy tests or ultrasounds or any of that, right? So there was this quickening and this sense of, fluttering, that sense of movement that we experience. What gives us that psychic fire that gives us a directed passion and helps us to endure and develop forbearance in life? Wishing or mere willing is not enough. It takes juice to power our sadhana, which is like, what is that deeper calling? And it's about vairagya, the discipline of making space in our life for that, by eliminating the dissipative energies and the distractions. Okay. So, tapas is a discipline of love, not a turning away, but an affirmation. And it's where there's an aching, burning desire to, get juiced up, in which you're relieved of neurotic egoic obsession, needless strain, and distraction. And we get in touch with it. It's the first word in the sadhana pada. We have to be in touch with that pain, where we are brokenhearted in the world, where we see fractious and hierarchical energies that alienate, and that really, as my husband described avidya, it's the denial of love as our impulse. It's where we go, and love has many ways, doesn't it? So in that way, we can conserve and recycle our energy towards the collective betterment and collective evolution, and develop our own character, tune in to the sacred presence and spiritual vibration. We use friction in that way to activate the spiritual circuitry. And it's an intentional offering into the sacred fire of sacrifice. All right. Let me look ahead here. So then we're also advised that you don't need to go search for difficulty. Difficulty will find you. Okay. But not turning away from pain and realizing, okay, I'm at a threshold. I have an opportunity. And Rama would say, when you're at the edge, well, like classically, you never step on the threshold of a sacred building. Okay. So you always either walk over it or walk through. And she would say, eventually, when you're on that precipice, you have to take the leap of faith. And either something will rise up to catch you, or you will learn that you have wings and fly. The last one is samadhi. And this is where we are able to remain with the object without distractions. And, this is something that Ray has been sharing with me a lot from his teacher, Ananda Murti, where we are the subjects and the object is source or God or divinity, the sacred. That we are the subject of the divine's meditation. And I love that poem from Rumi, which is like, consider the differences between your actions and God's actions. And this is where we, even if we did something that was maybe maladaptive or wasn't that skillful, instead of it being an undermining force, we realize, okay, this was that thread of love that was evolving me. And, can I expand my vision a little bit bigger and see that I have more choices than I thought. Even Ishwara, the divine, means you have choices in how you engage with this force, that you are being guided, but you also have choices. So this is described as where even death doesn't impede your commitment, because you're feeding something wild, something holy, and something bigger that you may never even see come to full fruition in your life. But you have made offerings into life's beauty making. So this is where, our devotion and our commitment to see the sacred, even in the mundanity, right? Or even in profanity, which can be very difficult, right? When people are fractured or splitting or split or broken, they do things that just, are heart crushing. But to really see that there's like a deeper issue here and a deeper calling for health and integrity. So in the sutras, we learned Samadhi Siddhir Ishvara Pranidhanatva. Isha, the divine center, Vara of all reality, Pra, discovered by being moved, Ni, deeply, and Dana, which is the core of our heart and our being, and it is also considered to be the wealth. Even pranayama is pranidhana. It's where we're offering our life force into the greater integrity. So samadhi is where we embrace. And it said that, the divine is always calling out to us. So we return that embrace every time we invocate. We voice that longing. And we can feel the greater integrity within ourselves. When we let down our defense mechanisms, our excuses, the inner teacher, love, awakens and guides us. Dana is that spiritual wealth in which we hold space for the sacredness. We feel the wholeness even when pieces appear to be missing. We can feel into the greater integrity and realize that we may not be there yet, and others might not be there yet. It's a process of ripening. Disconnection from this greater integrity in shamanic tradition and original peoples was said to be the source of disease. So sometimes that medicine man, and it might be a psychotherapist, it might be, could come in many forms, sees our wholeness even when we don't. Samadhi is experienced as grace, in which we lean into something bigger. We realize there's a larger momentum, and we're not passive, but we actually commune with this force. Okay, so there's so much to share, but fortunately we have time to unpack this. Let me look here ahead a little bit. All right, so in summation, one succeeds best when we use all these methods cooperatively, okay? And this is where it's multidisciplinary, and we're learning to be alchemists in our own lives, right? That our practice will change over time, and really to be able to yogas chitta vritti nirodha, check in within our inner state. Like, what lights me up? What do I need right now? What can I give myself? And it's probably already here if I can just let go of my of the blockages in my system, or where I've become callous. So here's a quote from the Gita. A yogin is greater than an ascetic. A yogin is considered to be greater than a person of knowledge or ritual works. Therefore, do thou become a yogin. And this is where we see that all lessons in life are about love in some form, and that the secret to life is to treat everyone we meet as if they have a broken heart. Then everything we do is supercharged with love, with surface, offering into, with virtue, energy, and creativity. So for our Divya Drishti rooms, and this will be a nice reunion for many of you to see each other after so much time, I invite you to explore a moment of quickening in your life. And maybe it was recent, or maybe it was, a soul rewiring moment in which you woke up to realize who you are in the eyes of creation or the creator, that you are a channel and inspired to begin a new life and change the storyline. Did it plug you in to something that was instinctive and wild? Did you have to break out of some kind of mold? Was there, were any of these methods part of that spiritual awakening? Genetic inheritance? Is it something that you inherited in your family? Through alchemy, diet, herbs, or shamanic medicines? through devotion to sacred incantations? Did you have a mentor or a special contact that awakened something in you? Was it through psychic fire? Was there friction in your life that pushed you to the edge? Was there a collapse before the breakthrough? How did this bring you into the realization of wholeness and the practice of the presence of divinity? There's a lot of questions here, so you're not meant to hold on to them, right? Were you born with any unusual gifts? Were they inherited? Then did you further develop them in some kind of way? What are you passionate about? And finally, what does freedom mean to you? Okay, so I'll repeat them quickly. Describe a moment of quickening, of soul rewiring that woke you up to who you are in the eyes of creation, in which you renovated your life. It plugged you into something instinctive and wild. How have any of these avenues been a part of your spiritual awakening? Maybe you engage with them consciously. Were you born with any unusual gifts? And how have you developed them? What are you passionate about? And what does freedom mean to you? Okay, so I like to share a quote from Sufi Llewellyn Vaughn. And he speaks about how, we need to have an energy source, which really at the core energy is love, and how to work with that love. We need instructions. And then we need a teacher who's going to guide us, and then who's eventually going to kick us out so that we have to go out into life. This isn't a tradition where you lived really closely with a teacher, right? And then show up in life. And as Joseph Campbell says, life is going to authenticate. Life is what really activates a functional practice, which of course has like the Sutric instructions or some kind of a download. And he says it takes a long time, a very, very long time to be impregnated by love. And so the efforts that we make to keep kindling that, and I loved what Kahea said in the breakout room where she was talking to one of the kumus, and kumu is the Hawaiian word for guru. It literally means a source or a root. And you didn't even really share what the question was, or I didn't get it. But Kahea said that the teacher responded and said, "It's none of your business." And I love that. It's like on a need to know basis where our mind weaves all these complexities, etc. It's like when we're tuning in with the practices which help us to see where we've had spiritual amnesia, where we're sleepwalking, where we've been callous or disconnected, to clear those pathways so we can whoa, we feel that flutter. There's the quickening and how we can feed that. And then, I loved what you shared, Anya, which is the moment that you were in. And I know the winters are hard and dark there in Colorado. And that when you received the transmission, through our Ohana, our greater community of Deb Buck, that you were just weeping. And it was like, you didn't say this, but I kind of recapitulated what you were intimating, which is that it wasn't a choice. And I can say personally for me, yoga wasn't a choice. I knew that this was going to be the way that I would find sanity and spiritual hygiene in a world of so much pain and so much fracture. It was like a lifeline for me. So, all of these ways are ways we can develop understanding, right? We don't really need to know why, but when we're connected to something that is like primal, that like something that stirs us, that gives us a newfound stability because we realize what the core is underneath it, even though we may not be able to ascribe words to it. And it helps us then to navigate with right attitude, with a good disposition, that what seems to be thwarting us is actually what is often growing us. And then it also allows us to have that virya. Tapas is what gives us virya, the stamina to realize that, it doesn't happen in a moment. No one said it would be easy. And to really realize that, we're discovering gems in these moments. So I'm so grateful again that, this gathering is about being in the presence of those who inspire us. And I'm so grateful for the inspiration that you all bring to me and the relationships that have developed and the sharing of our stories, our narcissistic injuries, how the changing of the dream, the larger cycles. I mean, we have lots of intergenerational perspectives here. We even have a little baby, little 3-week-old. So that's super exciting. Is there any questions or anything anybody wants to share? Jerry, how did you find us?
I started taking a teacher training with Anna.
Awesome.
And so she mentioned this, and I come from a background of Lakota ceremony and music and singing sacred songs. And I was like, do you think I can just jump in here? And she's like, yeah, you think you two are gonna get along great.
Oh,
So
awesome.
yeah,
Are you Lakota?
I am not. Uh, but I have been, I'm grateful that my life has unfolded in such a way that those ceremonies have been a part of my life for decades. And my life unfolded in such a way that I began making Native American style flutes like in my 20s. So I've been doing that for like 35 years. So yeah.
Wonderful. I'm so glad to meet you and welcome. And yeah, if you have like, if there's strands from that lineage that you want to share that you feel are resonating here, it's always really helpful, to have that.
Yeah, I was sharing. It's interesting because it kind of, I came here in this roundabout way from the flutes instructed me to make a set of 64 flutes attuned to the I Ching and the gene keys. And then the gene keys is all the language of shadow gift city. And I landed here and I'm like, oh, it's just come full circle. Like, so yeah, there's a lot of weaving that happens inside of myself. And I'm very excited to be here and doing this work.
Wow, Shadow Gift City, like City, Siddhi. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a set of 64. It's like it's yeah, all about human consciousness, like woven into a medicine wheel structure.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
I love that image of the medicine wheel, and it's almost like we could perceive all of these, the Janma, Aushadhi, Mantra, Tapaha, Samadhi as being part of this wheel. Yeah. Anybody else want to share anything?
I have a question, Bhavani.
Sure.
So, in terms of like the lineage, so Rama, and then you've shared a little bit about it before, but who was really Rama's oral teacher who was chanting with her? And
She mentions him in her book, and I forgot to write it down, but she was part of the ITP in Northern California, Institute for Transpersonal Psychology. And so there was like, I think Sri Aurobindo was part of that, integral yoga. And then she did have a Sanskrit professor that she studied with. And she was raised by, her father was like one of the first chiropractors in the country. So she grew up like in this alternative, you know, self-healing modality, and, was learned yoga at a pretty young age. I think in her like 19 or something like that, or maybe there was bits of it in the family, and studied and learned. And then, found Mr. Iyengar, and that's a great story. And then brought him back to the US and studied with him a lot. And you can see it in her legs. She has Iyengar legs, the way that they're really awake.
Great.
But then found that, that the way that he taught asana was disconnected from pranayama. And she felt her inner body closing down. And he even wanted her to write the manual and run the training for the San Francisco Iyengar Institute. And she had to disappoint him. She said, "This isn't my path." And then so she really went, and she fraternized quite a bit with Emily Conrad Daoud, who inspired this authentic movement of continuum. So it was a really interesting hotbed of kind of like luminaries and people who were thinking outside of the box. And it was this psychedelic revolution. And she said, "I never took any psychedelics, but I got a contact high just by being in the mix, where people were just like, there was like this wave. I think it was like a Uranus transit was happening in the 60s.
Yeah.
Breakthrough Aquarian kind of energy. And so she was really a practitioner, and she had teachers. It's in her book. I should have circled it and written it down. I can't remember, but there was a lot of streams that came through. She was really classically trained, but then she would take it further on her own, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for, I love hearing about her and knowing her through you and this class and her books that, I have her first book, a book on Padawan. But yeah, and I think what you shared actually gives me even more of a sense of like how much of a catalyst and a synthesis, how she did synthesize all this, because I didn't know if you were like with her and her teacher, but no, she was really synthesizing and catalyzing this and distilling it down and teaching you and others. So thank you, Bhavani.
My pleasure.
Uh,
Anybody else? Sarah. Oh, we can't hear you. Hang on.
So
There.
I just wanted to say, in terms of quickening or feeling excitement or whatever, that this first sutra of this pada, the way you explained everything to me was very exciting. So I wanted to say good job. And it was really great.
Thank
And
you.
it sounds perfect.
Awesome. Awesome. And you mentioned it a long time ago, this sense of alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that new series on Alexander the Great. It's really interesting, and they're finding like his place in Alexandria, and they were finding these shards of plaster and the colors, and the archaeologist, she's like, "This blue is not an Egyptian blue, like this is a Macedonian blue." And you could just, it was so interesting. And I flashed on you because the way like artists, it truly is and was alchemy, where you would like create these ores. You would take ores and have to make your own pigments, and the alchemy of all of that there's different ways of using alchemy, which isn't even necessarily imbibing them orally. There's like a visual kind of a nourishment that can happen. There's a visual magic that can happen, or sound, or music, or, making your own clay and the tactile energy. And it's wonderful because it's like all these things are saying that it's like, don't just rely on natural talents, but go and use the world and be creative in the world in whatever way you do it. That we're all artists in our own way. And it's so interesting that we have a lot of artists in this group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of ways to make magic and make love in the world. Yeah. Anybody else want to share? Denise, it's so nice to have you in the rooms. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to be loading this up. So when you go to your course, you'll see that, after each class, I create I guess I don't know what it's called. It's called a module or something, and it'll have the video. It will have the sutra in a soundbite that you can download. You can download the study sheet, and then the poems also, are really wonderful. I curate those, and it's a way that really speaks to the essence and the heart of this transmission. Thank you so much, and such a pleasure to sit and share with you. Aloha.